Good morning, Opening Pathways viewers. This is Tom Lenoble, and it's great to be with you again. Today, we have Siosi Samuels with us, and I'm really excited. He's coming all the way from Thailand, and Siosi has something called Conscious Stack Design. He's a three-time founder, a fractional CTO, and I love this conscious stack design. Lord knows we could be doing a lot more things consciously today. Good morning, Siosi. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing really well, and I've been looking forward to this chat as well.
Yeah, Siosi and I keep sharing with each other because this is very early for me and in the evening for him. And I'm grateful that he was able to join us today. Siosi, I want to jump right in and I want to
Sure.
hear a little about you and what sparked your idea for conscious stack design.
Mm, yes. Um, well, over the last 15 years, being in the tech industry and seeing the way that teams have moved with each new tech wave, from startups up to corporate and even government, I noticed some patterns. And often I would be brought in to oversee some new platform for groups, small to large. And after looking at the way that I guess organizations have gotten used to managing change, I realized there was a little bit of a Trojan horse, and that Trojan horse was actually aligning the stack within an organization with the culture itself. And often when I was initially brought on in the early days of my career, it'd be a very functional sort of thing of, okay, what does everybody want? Send out an employee survey, check the boxes. But there would still be many instances where it would check all the boxes, we'd roll it out, and the tool would still fail to get adopted properly, right? As intended. And so I started paying more attention to that. And as I got into more companies, I started to see more directly how the cultural behaviors were a direct reflection of the choices of their tools internally, and vice versa. Like they kind of reinforced each other as well. And so my way became about kind of going into an organization, making sure I satisfied all the executive desires, right? But really getting a feel for what was happening on the ground, at the water cooler, in the bathrooms, in the kitchen, seeing all those sort of cultural elements, and then seeing how the conversations and those sort of things were showing up in the way that they were using those tools. And so fast forward, I realized there was a pattern to my own way of intuitively doing that. And that's how conscious stack design got birthed, because I realized that I was kind of leveraging my own Polynesian ancestry, because I'm part Polynesian, part Fijian Indian. And on the Polynesian side, we have ancestry in wayfinding, right? So it's, being able to navigate the open ocean, uncharted territories with just the body and very, I guess, technologically reduced systems. Like I guess the technology was different back then, but we used the body as part of the definition of technology. And I noticed that I was doing that with tech throughout my life, actually, ever since I got my first MS-DOS computer when I was young, all the way up into my career. And so, yeah, that's how the system came about. And I intentionally chose conscious because I felt like we were entering a period where we were starting to have more and more conversations around consciousness itself, and it's just accelerating with AI. So I think the timing is right for it.
So here's what I love about this. What came to my mind as you were describing it. It's
Mm.
you use the five senses and then
Yes.
add a sixth sense in to understand the consciousness of
Yes.
company to understand how the tool will be successful. That's what I took
Correct.
away from that, which
Perfectly described.
really,
Yeah.
I love that. So I'm interested since you started on this path of adding this sort of consciousness to the process, which I'm sure you had and now identified how to use it. How did it
Mm.
fundamentally change you since you've been doing that?
Mm. So, interestingly, when I started applying the system on myself, I noticed that it was allowing me to stay more stable amongst the noise digitally. Because, a wayfinder's job is often to keep themselves and their crew um, on path, together, stable. And I realized that, instead of, I guess, the people alongside with you, our apps are almost functioning like digital members of your team, right? And it's now even more closer to us because we have AI agents. So that analogy is actually working really well. And so the job of the human is becoming less about what we would associate with general productivity since 1911s, right? And it's now starting to become more about coherence, which is the navigator's role. And so the navigator slash wayfinder needs to understand how to keep themselves coherent in an ocean that can be very treacherous, And I think what's happening is that it's seeping into the cognitive domain. And so often in talking about conscious stack design, I'm often talking about the effects on the mind. And so you'll notice that uh, on my LinkedIn and elsewhere when I'm having conversations, people ask like, "Oh, so what do you do?" It's like, "Oh, I'm protecting people's minds." And they say, "What?" Explain further. And I'm essentially protecting people's minds through sort of a new mental model. And it's interesting. I didn't expect myself to be doing this because, about 2 years ago, I started out with a specific software solution, right? But we can see what's happening now with AI. The entire SaaS market is just plummeting. It's not that it's going to go away completely. There's a transition period, but I think software itself and our relationship to it is changing. So I didn't go down the software route, and I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love Navigator and Wayfinder.
Yeah.
It feels like COC, you are helping us become more conscious as we step into the vision of this new world that we're getting immersed in with AI and what it will bring. That I know for me, I think it's very much in its infancy of
Right.
technologies I've seen in the past, and I find it really, really exciting, and I have to admit a little scary at the same time. But I love these.
Yeah.
Words you're bringing into this world of business. We could use something fresh. To this, um, is there some part of your identity as this is formed that you've had to let go of?
Ah, interestingly enough, I've had to let go of the idea as an entrepreneur. And even though I have entrepreneurial tendencies, I think I was trying to be a stereotypical entrepreneur that, we are used to seeing, in the news, etc. And I started to embrace more of my identity that has roots in my own ancestry. And again, I didn't expect this because, we live in a world where there are common job titles. When you do start to either work for yourself or build your own company, you have the freedom, to use whatever title you want. But I think there is something there when, as you get older and you become more in tune with who you are, who you truly are, it becomes easier to take up an identity that really fits right for you and aligns because you'll see it in the way that opportunities come to you. And it's the same sort of wayfinding, I guess, skill and philosophy that exists for Polynesians because Polynesian wayfinders often have this mentality of they do not go to the destination comes to them. And all you have to do is adjust the environment around you so that the destination comes to you. And I think that is now starting to happen more and more, especially with AI.
Yeah, this falls in my bucket of the wisdom of life.
Yeah.
It's one of the gifts of getting older. I have
Yeah.
friends that I share with them when they turn 40. I'd like to have a conversation with you about what 40s mean.
Mm,
It's so great because I think it's truly when the wisdom we've been gathering starts to really gel and make sense, and
yes.
and we find our way, and how that we help show the way for others. So tell me this.
Yes.
I get to speak to a lot of brilliant, brilliant minds. I'm here with one again today. And what I find is there's someone in our early upbringing that had an impact
Mm,
on who we are today. It may not have been a
mm,
one-to-one correlation, but someone in our younger days was certainly a catalyst in who we became, and there's glimmers of them. Who was that for you?
Mm. Wow. There's two people who come up for me, actually, kind of in the same. Yeah. Okay. So I'll share both. Um, One is one of my uncles from my mother's side. His name was Sully, and he was he was born as a premature baby, which meant he came out a fighter. And he always had this fighting attitude, and he would never give up. And that's become kind of one of my mottos in the sense that I have this saying, through patience and persistence, it will come. And it's part of that never give up attitude. And in Tuvaluan, the it will come, there's actually a specific phrase, which is Tēnā loa e whanatu. And my mom used to always share this with me growing up. And when I got to meet my uncle later, or spend more time with my uncle later on in life, um, he really kind of hammered that home about the patience and persistence side because he never gave up on what he really wanted. He did unfortunately pass away way too young, but he was one of those people that really made me believe more in myself and to not listen to what others say you should do, right? Doesn't mean that you don't take in advice, but learning to listen to your own intuition. And then on the flip side, outside of my uncle, was another teacher. His name was Mr. Ratliff, and he was my programming teacher back in high school. And he gave me a very firm lesson in the importance of not trying to find ways to cheat. This is a very interesting one because there was a time actually where I got caught cheating, and because there was pressures from, expectations of parents and, other people, it becomes less about learning and it becomes more about the grades, right? And so I was getting a little bit too sneaky for my own good. And so there was this whole operation with a few friends of mine. And it really came crashing down on me at a point too when there was a lot happening in my family that was not good. And but this particular teacher of mine, he saw straight through, I guess, what I was trying to convince myself of, right? And he was the one who'd said, just because you fail in one instance doesn't mean that you failed in life. Is that you can learn from the failures. And despite how many times you fail, you just keep going. And so I hope you can see how the connection, right? One is never give up. And the other one is don't try to find shortcuts and cheat other people or try to cheat life because there's wisdom in going through it and going through the struggle. And I'm
Yes.
really grateful that that happened to me earlier on in my life because, I mean, we can see what happens when people don't get that sort of course correction. They
Yeah.
take that into way higher positions.
I love this. So much wisdom you're sharing. I think when we don't realize the only way to the other side is through, uh,
Through, exactly.
skip around something we get to then learn again later at some point when it's presented to.
Yes.
I love this cheating thing. You remind my father, once he realized that a belt wasn't going to work very well,
Yeah, we had that as well.
his new punishment
Yeah.
became cheating, and I would have to write this same sentence like 10,000 times. And it
My
was
gosh, yeah.
my will mind my parents, elders, and the worst part was my brother. And so
Mm,
I was doing it one time. I was a little kid, and I had learned the magic, which most people don't even know what this is anymore, of carbon paper,
mm,
which was this
mm.
paper that you could put between paper and write on it. It was like the copy machine before the copy machine. So I thought,
Yeah, yeah.
well, I went and took my little piggy bank and bought this carbon paper and whipped out these and, and he looked at them and I remember his face because I know he wanted to smile at my
The
creativity.
genius.
He ripped
Yeah.
up and told me to start over, and I'll
Mm,
never forget that lesson of because I was cheating. I'll never forget that lesson.
yes.
Okay. Tell me this, COC,
Mm,
what
yeah.
values have guided you from the start, and which ones have deepened over time?
Hmm. Family was a big one growing up. And it's kind of interesting because we were very big and strong on family until my family broke apart. Well, parents got divorced and, the one time idyllic family was no longer, right? And then I saw how deep, but also how fragile family can be. And then I also learned another lesson the around peace or true peace, and how you can't necessarily have peace if it's built on lies. It's not a true peace, you know? And so the values, I think for me, I still highly value family, and I also highly value peace, but it must be built on a foundation of truth. And, different cultures kind of have different relationships with it. And for me, I think that's where I started to really value truth more, in conjunction, of course, with some of these cultural values that I got from both my Polynesian side and the Indian side. But, I was raised essentially in Western culture, Western education. And so there was always that tension, the individualism and then the collectivism, right? From the East. And so uh, those things together then kind of cemented this idea of harmony. But yeah, harmony and peace cannot be truly achieved without it being built on truth. And
Mm,
so, yeah, if I was to sum it up, it would be that.
I love this. Where
Yeah.
has life asked you to slow down recently? What did you hear?
Definitely when I met my now wife. She is somebody who's definitely the type to stop and smell the roses. Whereas for me, we're talking previously about the identity around as an entrepreneur, right? And there's like a hustle mentality that comes with that in the early days. And I was so used to being on the go all the time, right? My mind just wouldn't stop. And I think because of her, I learned to stop and smell the roses, literally. I used to get annoyed with it at the beginning, but then I really noticed how she was more balanced in, who she was, right? And I think when you're an entrepreneur or you're in startup land, you get used to not being balanced, right? It's always extremes, right? Just like hustle, go, do what you needed to achieve your goal. But there was this like story, and I can't recall, you might know this story, but it's like about this entrepreneur who meets a fisherman on a boat, and the fisherman is just fishing out in the lake, and the entrepreneur is like, oh, have you ever thought about, like, fishing for more fish and then starting your own businesses and then selling it and going through that whole thing. And then the fisherman said, but to do what? So that you have enough money to be able to sit here and fish like I do. And he's like, but I'm doing it now. you know and that really made me think about, what is it that we're doing,
Mm,
and why are we doing it, and how much of us are actually, or how many of us are actually being. We're supposed to be human beings, but it seems like we're human doings more than we are being. And I think now we are being confronted with this in the AI space, because it's taking out so many jobs that we've gotten used to. And for many, it's starting to force them to question, what does it mean to be human.
yeah.
And I think that's pretty exciting, but also scary, I'm sure, for a lot of people.
Yeah, you're tapping into where my work sits because I work from an ontological approach. Um,
Mm,
we all know about the study of psychology, our thoughts, minds,
yeah,
dreams, and cosmology. Well, the study of
yeah,
ontology is the study of being. I'm much more
yeah,
interested when I work with people in how they're being than what happened to them when
yes,
five or their last relationship, and how that
yes,
being impacts their ability to reach their goals and dreams. So I love this that you're bringing to
100%.
us today. Tell me this. How has your relationship with risk changed in the past few years?
Hmm, that is a really good question. Risk. There was an interesting analogy I saw on, I think it was Twitter or X the other day, where they were talking about how they were compartmentalizing life into four categories, and they were doing it from a founder's position. And they were giving examples of how a lot of founder stories show that when you're in work mode, it's like four burners on a stove. And when you go into work hustle mode, that gets all the gas for the flames. and then the other ones get lowered. And that they were saying that the risk is always wherever you put your focus or attention, the other areas get less of it and less gas. And so I think my approach to risk, especially when you get into relationship with others, or if you have more people that you're responsible for, right? You tend to want to reduce the risk because you're responsible for more people. But if you have entrepreneurial tendencies, you always see the risk being not going after the things you've always wanted to, right? And I think my risk is less, I would say, it's less, what's the right word here? Extreme. I think it's just less extreme. I think the way that I used to take risks before had less calculation in it, and I would say less intuition. So what's been super fascinating is that by aligning myself and utilizing my intuition more, I've actually been taking less risk, but getting more upside. So I think that's how my risk relationship has changed.
Back to the wisdom of life. There we go, COC.
Yes.
How
Yeah.
does COC decide when to pivot or push?
Mm. Oh, oh, that's a good one. I've gone through many pivots throughout my life and career. And I think, you were mentioning about 40s. And strangely enough, from young, I was always looking forward to my 40s. And I hit 40 this year. And I feel like, yeah, everything that has been happening up until now has been training. And I feel like my North Star is way clearer now. Actually, to me, it's set. But because of my life, I have also always been open to change. But I think that's why the Wayfinder analogy has worked really well for me, because you can still have your North Star, the direction that you go, but the conditions of the ocean are always going to change. And so, something might deviate you off path, but if you know very clearly your North Star, you will change the conditions, change what's happening to you to align better so that you can get to that North Star still. And so I would say up until now, it was more about me learning the art of wayfinding on land. And it's like now I'm finally out in the ocean, you know, and I've already had a few battles with the ocean, but the North Star is just super clear to me. And I've learned how to feel the North Star, even if the clouds are covering it, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, yes. I
Yeah.
think back to that saying that I'll manipulate a little bit. Sometimes we have to realize we are a drop in the ocean, and if we behave
Yeah.
like the rest of the drops in the ocean, things get a little easier, and we're able to see a little more clearly. So I love
Yeah.
this. Tell me this. What was something about leadership that no one prepared you for?
Hmm. That leadership would be no different to leading a family. Why I say this? Because a lot of the dysfunctions I saw in my own family, I also saw in large organizations. The dynamics were very similar, right? I always saw business, I thought it was supposed to be something separate, but actually, there's a lot of similarities between the way families operate and the way businesses operate. And of course, every family is different. And so there are patterns, right, amongst different families. And I think there's that one famous book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team or something.
Mm,
Um, when I read that, I was just nodding the whole time. I said, yep, this is exactly what I've experienced, but somebody has articulated it really well. And I think that part. So I started leaning into my own experiences with my own family, and that helped me to deal with people problems within business. And it was really interesting because it was the people problems that often got in the way of a lot of other things. I think plans always look good on paper. As soon as you introduce humans into those plans, right? You just sometimes don't know where that's going to land you. And I would say that was my biggest lesson or biggest insight, because there are all these other things about, how to build good strategies and good tactics and all that sort of stuff. But I do like more pragmatic, I think, solutions and advice. And a lot of those plans sometimes would just get thrown out the window once it hits reality. So I learned to just apply family dynamics to businesses.
interesting. How do
Mm.
you how do you recognize when fear is information versus a stop sign?
Hmm. Well, I think you can look at the fear aspect as an underlying behavior pattern. Um, well, that's what comes up for me when I hear that. Because, say, for example, in working with teams or companies, uh, fear of change, right? When a company clearly needs to change, it becomes information. And if you know that the company needs to reorganize itself or go through a digital transformation or something of the sort, and there's a lot of fear and criticism and skepticism popping up, I think that's where you can start to use the fear as information and really dig into why does this fear exist. I think there is a fundamental part to where certain personality types may have that fear from their own personal backgrounds or experiences, and then they bring that into the workplace. But I think that can still be dealt with if you have courage, and you can get the right buy-in from executives, etc. Uh, but I think that's when I would use it as information. It'd be a stop sign when I guess you're dealing with higher stakes technologies or partnerships or things where it might have very real consequences on lots of people. Um, a perfect example is like in the AI space right now. I think a lot of the fears around AI is warranted and expected with any new technological, innovation or change. But AI is a different sort of technology. It has reasoning capabilities. Some people argue that, we've probably already hit AGI, but what we're seeing commercially is just what we can see. Um, and so I think the fear is warranted, but human beings have always been kind of dancing between that binary of, uh, fear and trust and faith in the opposite. I generally am a glass half full person, but I think I have learned to respect fear because it also, yeah, it can be information that helps us to know
Yeah.
what to overcome.
Yeah, I've my view of fear has changed over time, and to me
Mm.
today is when it might be in the future, but right now, fear seems to me an opportunity for growth
Yeah.
of
Yep.
some sort. Um,
Yep.
and that's not when a bear is chasing us or a tiger, obviously, um, but
Mm.
but these everyday fears that come along that pop up for us, and especially in business of either braving something new or even sticking with something we're on plan. What do we
Yeah.
do with that, and how can we grow from it? I think is certainly interesting. Tell me, what are you
Mm.
most proud of? Not professionally, not publicly, but
Yeah.
personally, what are you most proud of?
Personally. Being a big brother to many sisters, both biologically and around the world. So
Mhm.
I'm the eldest in my family, so I've taken on the big brother role for my sisters, but I have somehow adopted sisters everywhere I've gone from work to countries. And I don't know how, maybe it's just the big brother energy, but I have many sisters around the world. And once I have made the decision or have that relationship with them, they are my sister, and I treat them like I would my own blood sisters. And
Yeah.
so I think personally, I'm proud of that because yeah, I don't know. I think it just comes with the territory of being an older brother.
Yeah, I love this. It
Yeah.
makes me think of a book for you, a book title, My Sisters or something like that. My Sisters of the World.
Yeah. Yes. I think
Yeah,
it's I'm at number 13. I've got 13 sisters.
yeah, that's even better. 13 sisters. That's
Yep.
been going on.
Yep.
So, um, where have you had to put in a boundary that's essential to your sustainability?
Hmm. Sustainability. I would say probably time boundaries. Before I used to say yes to everything. I think it's a good phase to go through to say yes to everything. But I think I've learned the power in both yes and no.
Mhm.
Um, it's good to say yes, but I think there comes a time where you also need to be clear on what is a clear no. And I think I have this saying, if it's not a hell yeah, it's probably a no. And I
Yeah.
think I used to always try to accommodate something that wasn't a hell yeah. And so I think I'm much clearer on the hell yes when it comes to making decisions because I can make decisions pretty quickly. Uh, but I think those decisions have been optimized better by using that sort of hell yeah indicator.
Yeah.
And so I don't waste time deliberating on the maybe anymore as much. And yeah, with time, right? Scheduling sort of certain dates for certain activities and yeah, doing my best to respect my time and others. Because I know different cultures are different. Being in Mexico, time is a little bit more relaxed versus, other places in the West. And so it's just always adjusting. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that.
I'll give you one I learned was also not the yes or the no, but not now.
Ah, that's an interesting one. Yes, that can also be an answer.
Yeah. Not now is I found that for me, when I was being indecisive about something that felt like I
Mm,
needed to say yes, but I wanted to say no, that perhaps the answer
mm.
is simply not now.
That's a good one. I'll make a note of that actually, because that can also be a great way to still keep things open, and not be rude about it either. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
Um, um, yeah, there's so many applications of not now, which I love. So, how do you balance
Yeah.
being a leader with being
Mm.
a learner?
Ooh. Well, I just combine the two. Become a leading learner. I think for me, yeah, I used to see them as separate, but I think my leading style has moved into I lead by learning, and then you start to lead by example that way, right? Because if you as a leader are, and it is known that you are always learning, then people stop putting you up on a pedestal and stop thinking that you don't make mistakes. Because I think that is the hard part when you put yourself in a leadership position and everyone expects you to know all the answers. I think I've seen many good examples around me throughout my career and my life of leaders who took on that sort of style. And I think I learned to respect it because it didn't matter what the stakes were or how big they got by keeping that sort of attitude of being a leading learner. It kept expectations realistic. You know, those type of leaders would often be like, "Hey, I don't know the answer," and that's okay. Because then you don't build a sort of culture or group around you of folks who are always just waiting for your command. You
Yeah,
know,
yes.
and yeah, so combine them.
Josie, tell me this. What does renewal look like for you beyond rest and time off?
Hmm. Beyond rest. Interesting. I'd say active dreaming. So I am an active dreamer, have been from young. My mom did a good job of training us after we would wake up from our night sleeps. We'd go and have breakfast and we would share dreams at the table. And so I think we were just primed for dreaming. And so I get a lot of answers to things through my dreams. I still journal a lot. I still write down a lot of my dreams, and it's been super useful actually with I guess all the tools that have come out because I can now start putting all those dream journals into um, tools like Notion and other things. And then you can start going back and finding patterns. As soon as AI was getting more and more popular, I was like, oh my God, all my dream journals. Let's go back and see what all
Yes.
my dreams were revealing about me. And so to me, that's a form of renewal for me because it kind of helps close the loop on stuff that happens throughout my life. And I think what was happening before is that so much is coming through us every single day that we can forget to close those loops. And I think it's become an important part of my personal practice to learn how to close those loops because I think not closing them also acts as like a cognitive tax as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that.
Of dreaming. I get disappointed if I can't remember my dream. And
Yes,
I
like come on.
did this work years ago. I can't remember the guy's name right off the top of my head, but the book is, I think, of Heaven and Earth. And he
Hmm.
was a big dream guy, and he taught you how to use your dreams, this methodology of how you
Yep.
captured what a dream, and you took it through this exercise. They became bubbles, and then if you went through this process, it sort of came out to you what the dream was about. And
Hmm.
I used it for years. I'm glad you brought this up today because I have to find that book because
Yes,
I'm especially keen on my dreams lately and what they're bringing to me, which is
very informative.
often not what
Yeah.
they on the surface, as you know. So,
Yes.
read this. What's the boldest vision of what comes next?
My gosh, the boldest vision of what comes next. Hmm. Well, this I have had the vision for me has actually gotten clearer and clearer over time. So what's super fascinating is that in my life, I would have a goal, and when I would hit that goal, it would be like a layer peeling off to something larger. So at this point in time, the vision has been, or the vision is, to essentially build up this movement of conscious technologists around this conscious stack design stuff that I'm doing as a form of cognition protection as we move through this transition period in, I guess, humanity's history, thanks to AI. Because I think this is definitely one of the more significant technological transitions or innovations or revolutions, whatever you want to call it, where we've finally built a technology that could outsmart us and probably already has, right? There's still, I think, many more years where this transition is occurring. But I think the vision for me is to act as that wayfinder and to help protect human minds in this stormy digital ocean where it's very much uncharted territory right now for us as a species. And to me, I think if I can honor my own great grandfather saying, when he said it will come, tena lo e fanatu, this is the deeper purpose. He said that as part of a prophecy that there would be a time in the future where his mokopuna, right, descendants, would come back seeking the old ways. And they would come back seeking the old ways to be able to assist in what I think we are going through now. And so that's the vision that is grounded in the past.
Hmm.
Mm.
Love this. This could be a whole nother talk right there. So tell me this. What does legacy mean to you at this stage of your life?
Hmm. At this stage of my life, I think legacy is more about honoring my great grandfather's prophecy and also honoring the wisdom of silica and sharing the wisdom of silica. And I'll explain why. So my name is Siosi, right? In Tuvaluan, Siosi. If you look up the atomic structure of silicon dioxide, which is also known as silica, you will see Siosi planted all over it, silicon and oxygen. And this is super fascinating to me because all this came to a head when I had this life-changing experience with psilocybin mushrooms out in the mountains of Oaxaca, in a place called San Jose del Pacifico. I was never really one into, doing drugs or any of those sort of things, but the opportunity came about, and I was with my wife, and we ended up doing mushrooms up in the mountains of San Jose del Pacifico. And these mushrooms told me everything about why everything happened to me. And they explained that your name is no accident. And they were explaining to me that the wisdom of silica, quartz crystals, silicon dioxide, is something that you are meant to bring out. And so this has been a journey of me trying to understand what the hell they meant by that. And as time is going by, I think I'm understanding more and more why.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is, I think that is going to be part of my legacy. We will see. But is to help bring out the wisdom of these quartz crystals. And
Yes.
didn't expect this at all. But that's where
There's
life has taken me.
so much interesting research about psilocybin, and it gets stalled and then started, and a lot of talk about microdosing for depression these days. Actually, in my book, you can learn about my first experience
Oh, right. Yeah, interested.
in mushrooms, even though I almost got shot by
Oh
the
my
guy
gosh.
who owned the land. But um,
Oh,
probably a whole nother podcast as well.
yeah.
You're reminding me of Charles that we both know who lives in Awaka, but
Yes.
it's going to be
Yes.
a great podcast. And he keeps telling me I need to come visit him in Awaka, so maybe I'll do it. But
Yeah.
as we both know, he's like this Iron Man 3 times, and now he's doing
Yes.
race. And I'm like, Charles, I'm afraid I might not come out alive with you. But
Uh,
I love these ideas of how we look at um, going beyond just, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, just the five senses and bring in a sixth sense or maybe a seventh one at some point. Tell me this.
yeah.
If a much younger COC was listening to this podcast, what would you tell him?
Ooh. Well, I guess my motto, Tena lo efanatu, through patience and persistence, it will come. And it would be the same thing that I've already had embedded in me since young, because I would not be who I am today if I had not gone through all of those things in my life,
Yeah.
right? And it's one of those things, yeah, right? Like you could change stuff, but would I be who I am today if it weren't for those things?
This is exactly what my book is about. I wrote
Love
this
it.
for people to see that who we are today is the sum parts of who we've been in all our life. Even if some of them are
Yeah,
outrageous, we may feel shameful for, may want to keep them private, or just think people
yeah,
don't understand. But you would not be who you are today without all
yeah.
those parts. And I think it's worth celebrating them. If you could
I
leave our
agree.
listeners with one invitation, what would it
Mm.
be?
Hmm. I think at this point in time is to really start looking at your tools and technology more consciously. Obviously, this is to do with conscious stack design, but my sense has been that we are really entering a new phase for humanity, and there needs to be a new cognitive model that is beyond the machine, but that does help us with the machine. And the quartz crystal stuff, that's actually part of what's happening in the background and got a bunch of research on it. But I'm exploring this new research area that actually looks into how the way that quartz crystals are formed might actually provide wisdom for us to organize ourselves as human beings in this next era.
Mm.
So, yeah, stay tuned for that.
Yes. COC Way Shower Navigator, tell us where we can find you.
Yep, at georgecoc.com. So COCSIOSI.com. So georgecoc.com. And if you want to learn more about the Conscious Stack stuff, just go to consciousstack.com as well. And my social media handles are the same as my personal George Siosi. So at George Siosi.
Thank you for being on Opening Pathways today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And to my viewers, this is Tom Lenoble, and I'll see you next time.